Hey, it's Liberty, and today we are really going to piss off Miranda Priestley because we are doing the book equivalent of Florals for Spring, and this is romance books for the month of February. Now, some of these are straight up romances, some of these are fantasy books or historical fiction with strong romance plot lines, and that's how I'm going to divide them into contemporary, fantasy, and historical. If you like this, do give this video a thumbs up. I make videos all about books, history, culture, etc. So do check those out and subscribe if you would like to. And if you'd like to buy me a cup of tea, the link is going to be in the description. I'm going to get straight into it. First up, I'm going to talk about some contemporary recommendations. And if you're looking for a romance set in the kitchen, look no further than A Taste of Sage by Yafa S. Santos. This is a romance set in the restaurant world in New York City. Lumi Santana is a chef who kind of has an ability like synesthesia, but more that she can taste people's emotions that they were feeling when they were cooking the dish. At the start of the novel, she opened up a sort of fusion restaurant with foods from her Dominican heritage sort of mixed with foods from all over the world. She used her savings, this was her dream, but it failed. She's forced to take a sous chef job at a very traditional French restaurant in Midtown. The owner is Julian Dax, who's a celebrated chef. He's very attractive, but also known to be very rude. He's got an acid tongue. This is enemies to lovers. They do not get along at first. Lumi can't stand Julian's arrogance and she swears she will never eat his cooking until she does, and it knocks her for six. They certainly have chemistry, but there are a few spanners in the works, and that forces both of them to sort of confront their own issues and traumas. The romance was simmering. Both characters have great arcs. I read this after watching a bunch of episodes of The Bear, and the sort of acclimation of the story within the kitchen scenario was really, really fun. Whenever people talk about like food from their culture and how it impacts their lives, I love reading about that. But also like this book validated me in my fusion cooking. Like I put cumin in risotto, I put gochugaru in pasta, I put Worcester sauce in basically anything. And frankly, you're going to have to tear my like Chinese chili flakes and chili oil out of my cold dead hands. I will also put that in anything. So yeah, I seem to have taken a tangent. Moving on. Next up is a publishing romance called Meet Me in the Margins by Melissa Ferguson. Savannah Cade is the main character of this, and she works in a publishing company, and she's also working on a novel of her own. The editor-in-chief of like the biggest romance publisher in the country has requested to see her manuscript, but she's doing it in secret because the publisher that she works for is like really highbrow, won't touch romance with a barge pole, like thinks it's the lowest of the lowest form of writing. After almost exposing her novel at work, there's this hidden room that no one really goes to in the company, and she puts her book in there to work on it. The company has a new CEO, William Pennington, who was the son of the former CEO, the big romance hater. She finds out, however, she's not the only person who knows about this room, and she soon finds like comments in the margins of her novel. Critical ones, but helpful, because when she hands her book to the romance editor, it's the same notes as the mystery editor. Claire tells her that she has 6 weeks to resubmit, and so she finds herself like writing notes to the mystery editor, and they end up helping her. You've got male coded. If you're a creative person, then you will resonate with like Savannah's struggles with her art and like improving it. The back and forth between them was really fun to read, and yeah, this was a really sweet romance. Next up is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, and this is a romance between a ghostwriter and a ghost. Yes, you heard that right. Florence Day is a ghostwriter for one of the most prolific romance authors in the country. However, she has like a huge breakup, and she can no longer believe in love. She can no longer feel like she can write romance authentically. Her new editor is very handsome, very tall. He is not forgiving in any way about her deadline. And so Florence sort of like prepares to say goodbye to her life because she's like, I'm going to get fired. Unfortunately, she has to return home to the small town where she grew up for the first time in decades to be with her family when her father dies. Her family runs the local funeral parlor, and since she was young, she's been able to see ghosts. She's struggling to deal with everything, which makes it so much worse when she has an encounter with a very familiar, tall and handsome ghost. And they are both as equally confused as each other. The event of the story really makes her question, what she thought she knew about love, her life, and death. I'm obsessed with the tagline, "Romance is most certainly dead, but so is her new editor." I really enjoyed this. The dynamic between them is obviously like really interesting. Sorry, it's another romance book about a writer, but what can I say? There's something intriguing about people who write stories for a living and have like control over those, sort of ending up in a position where they completely have zero control and they have to live these stories instead. Next up is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. And this is like a boy next door romance between like a hopeless romantic and her obnoxious neighbor. Liz is a daydreamer who loves rom-coms, and she has a huge crush on Michael, who moved away a few years ago, but now he's back. And Liz is determined to make her move, and she enlists the help of her neighbor Wes. He seems to be like hitting it off with Michael, like friend-wise. Wes and Liz have a very strained relationship. You know, they've been pranking each other, getting in each other's way since they were young. And so they kind of have to get on the same page and work together. And as the two of them scheme, they sort of really get to know each other and find themselves enjoying each other's company. Will Liz's idea of romance and the perfect prom allow her to truly see how she feels inside? I really enjoy this one. Like, the chemistry between them was really, really fun, and they were sweet. There were so many like rom-com references because Liz really loves rom-coms. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And there's a sequel as well, I think, that came out recently. Time for some fantasy, and next is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. Elizabeth has grown up thinking that all sorcerers are evil. She was raised as a foundling at one of the kingdom's great libraries, and so she's grown up around magical books, magical grimoires, that have to be kept in chains on the shelves or they'll like break out and turn into monsters. Suddenly the library's most dangerous grimoire breaks free on its own, apparently, and Elizabeth is kind of, implicated in this. She has to turn to her sworn enemy, Nathaniel Thorne, and his mysterious servant for help. However, unluckily for her, she's ended up in the middle of this like centuries-old conspiracy that could not only end the great libraries as a whole, but the whole land. They were both great characters. Elizabeth and Nathaniel loved them. Their chemistry was great. I love it when characters make other characters question their whole worldview. Oof, love that. I enjoyed the plot. It's a standalone, which I always say I want more standalones, and then I get to the end of like books like this and I go, I want a sequel. I mean, there is a little sequel novella, but yeah. And next is The Vermilion Emporium by Jamie Paxton, and this is set in a place called Severon. Think cobblestone streets and like medieval to Renaissance era, that transition era, like inspired buildings. The main characters are Kinta and Twain. Kinta's mother was a circus performer who kind of has this magical legacy, and Kinta has been waiting for the Vermilion Emporium to show itself so that she can kind of make a mark in the world and, live up to her mother's legacy. I say that because it's very much like Howl's Moving Castle. The Emporium just sort of pops up randomly. Twain is a struggling musician who is just trying to make ends meet, who seems to have like a knack of finding starlight. When the two of them meet outside the Emporium, together they discover a book that teaches them how to weave starlight into like magical lace. When their work catches the eye of some very important people, they find themselves in a position where like they need to find more starlight fast. Except the secret to finding starlight has been lost for centuries. It's a great adventure story set in a well-built fantasy world with a solid romance. I really love these two. They really fight for each other and for the world that they want to live in. Next up is The Queen's Rising by Rebecca Ross. This is the first in a fantasy duology based on like cultured Renaissance France and like rough, wild Britain, essentially. No, I'm not joking. We're literally like the wild North people across the channel, but we love women also. So I'll take that. I think it's a fair trade. Mayvana is the sort of like British inspired kingdom, and there is like there's lots of magic there that used to be tied into the royal bloodline and specifically women, but that line of women was overthrown and there's a usurper on the throne, and Brianna is the main character. She is got one parent from Mayvana and one from Valenia, which is like France. She was dumped in this boarding school by her grandfather in Valenia called Magnolia House when she's like 10 years old, and this is what they call a passion house. It means that students will choose a passion, which is art, music, dramatics, knowledge, and wit. And you kind of have to master one of those passions. And then when you're 17 or 18, you find a patron and you sort of go and build a career. Brianna ended up basically trying all of them and settling on knowledge. Her tutor very much sees her heritage as being like a strength rather than a weakness, which is, great for her. Because when she finally finds a patron, it is a disgraced lord from Mayvana. I'm not going to say any more because frankly, the blurb gives way too much away. I listened to this duology as an audiobook, and when I say I found the attempts of the like person reading it to do like various accents, it was so funny. Like, it was entertaining, not in a bad way, like not in a distracting way. yeah. It kind of helped because I was gathering from the accents, like where all these kingdoms are supposed to be, like within Mavana, based on like where the accent was. Here's the thing. The chemistry between Brianna and her love interest, insane. I loved the political aspect of this and the world building and the found family. Loved. I hate the age gap. I am warning you now because I don't want to hear you coming back and being like, oh, the age gap was problematic. I know it's problematic. I hate it. But I hate myself for loving it. But I just sailed through this book. It provided me great comfort when I was really ill, and like so ill that I had to go to bed and turn off all the lights and like shut out every bit of light because I had a photophobia headache. This is editing me just popping in to say that I never like really gave specifics, which could lead people to think it's crazy bad. So the age gap is like 18 and like 24 at the start of like when the action gets going, which is like obviously incredibly problematic. But I just realized like the way I said it, it could have potentially been like 18 and 30s, 40s, 50s. I didn't really specify. So there we go. There it is. Bye. But yeah, I hate that I loved it so much. And I fear that I'm going to have to read more Rebecca Ross. And I knew that people loved her, but I understand why now. The next one should be no surprise. It is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, another fantasy duology set in Leigh Bardugo's Grishaverse. Ketterdam is where this book is set, and it is inspired by Amsterdam at like the golden age of the Dutch Empire, so like 17th century. It's this massive trading hub, and Kaz Brekker is a teenage gang leader essentially who has been given a chance to pull off a heist that would set him up for life. Like all heists though, he can't pull it off on his own, so he kind of puts together this crew. Jesper is a sharpshooter with guns of steel. Literally. Sorry, that was too much. He's a bit of a gambler, as Jesper. Inej is known as the Wraith because she's so stealthy and she works with Kaz and Jesper. Nina is what is called a heart render. This is where like the magic system comes in because she's a Grisha and she can affect people's like heart rates and stuff. Matthias is a soldier from a kingdom who hates Grisha with a passion. They don't realize how important the object of the heist is, and it's the difference between like saving the world and a lot of people dying and success. So the stakes are very high. We've got 6 characters, 3 couples, so much yearning, like we want to be together but someone's trying to kill us, or like etc, like high stakes drama, and I just love it. The plot was great also. The characters were all great on their own, and then the chemistry between all of the different couples, fantastic. Just read it. Now we're going to the past, and we're heading to Regency England, and this is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Owen. Kitty Talbot is the main character of this, and she's responsible for her family's fortune after the death of her parents sort of left her in charge of her 4 younger sisters. She has 12 weeks to find a husband until her father's debts get called in. Being a governess or a lady's maid just won't get her there fast enough, and so Kitty has to find a man with a fortune. She goes to London with one of her younger sisters to be sponsored by an Aunt Dorothy, who isn't nobility but can sort of get her into all the places that she needs to get into. Kitty has to integrate herself with her future husband and with their family, and she catches the eye of a second son and gets his mother on side. But the elder brother, Lord Radcliffe, he sees right through her. Is there going to be blackmail, extortion? Is he going to help her? You'll have to read to find out how it goes. I really enjoyed this. Kitty was such a great character. Like, she has the practical mind of Charlotte Lucas with also the like attitude of Elizabeth Bennet. Like, I don't know how to describe her, but like there were also great side characters. The chemistry between everyone was fantastic. This is a great package. It's, great Regency romance, fun times, hijinks, the lot. Now we're getting medieval, and this is Gwen and Art Not in Love by Lex Croucher. This novel focuses on a quartet. Gwen is the Princess of England, and she has been betrothed to Art, a future duke, since birth, and they do not like each other. But they become reluctant allies when Gwen catches Art kissing a boy, and Art reads Gwen's diary and finds like loads of saucy entries about her fantasies about the only female knight, Bridget Leclerc. They will play the heteronormative game to protect themselves. As Gwen gets close to Bridget and Art gets closer to Gwen's older brother, things get tense and they have to sort of navigate the conflict between their duty, their hearts, Can they also find a friendship between the two of them? There's also like an overarching political plot in there in terms of like rebellion and the legacy of the King Arthur myth on how that plays into the dynamics of the kingdom. It's so good. It's got this great balance of like political plot and then the romance. The whole cast is amazing. Just go read it. Thank you for watching. Those are my 10 little recommendations for romance books for February if you're feeling in the mood. Do let me know which one of those you should fancy the most, and if there are any romances that you recommend to me or other people, do give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like. I'm going to get back to working on my favourite author's favourite author video. Episode 1 is reading one of Jane Austen's favourite authors, so just have to see how that goes. Happy reading!